Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite audiobooks that I've listened to because I myself am a very busy person, especially right now. It's busy season at work. I'm just constantly scatterbrained. My mind is going a million miles a minute and it's hard to focus on reading words on paper. So my solution to that is audiobooks. Listen to books when you can't read them. You can listen to audiobooks while you are doing chores, while you're walking your dog. You can listen to audiobooks while you're working if you're doing something very simple and repetitive that doesn't require a lot of mental energy. So, audiobooks are great, and here are a few audiobook recommendations if you would like to start listening to more audiobooks. We're going to start with a recent discovery / favorite, and that is The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series, read by Andy Serkis. If you're familiar with The Lord of the Rings, especially familiar with the movies, you've heard the name Andy Serkis, you probably know that he played Gollum in all of the Hobbit and all of the Lord of the Rings movies. Luckily, he does not read these books in Gollum's voice, thankfully, but he does a really good job of creating a distinct and unique voice for each of the characters that he's reading about. And I love that. I love it when an audiobook narrator creates these distinctive voices, because then I get to recognize those voices, and I feel like I know the characters because they feel like real people. If I can hear their own distinct voice and recognize that, oh, that's Aragorn talking, or no, that's Samwise, like I just love being able to recognize those characters through the voice, the way they're voiced. So I highly recommend those books for that reason. Another reason I really enjoyed listening to Andy Serkis read these books is that in these books, there's a lot of songs. There's a lot of singing in The Lord of the Rings. When you read it on paper, you have to kind of fill in like what that song sounds like the melody of the song and stuff. And so lots of times when I get to stuff like that in books and I'm reading it physically, I kind of skim over it. I don't really think too much of it. Yeah, I skim over it and get back to the plot or whatever. In listening to the audiobooks, Andy Serkis actually sings all the songs, which I really enjoyed. It made it feel like it felt like I was in a different world. I was in a different culture where like singing is a big part of, how they express themselves. I really enjoyed actually hearing those songs and hearing the music behind those songs, and it just felt more real and more magical. So I loved that. Another narrator that I love, like audiobook narrator that I just absolutely love and adore, is Jim Dale, because he also does all of the voices. He creates a distinct voice for each character, and it just makes, like I said, it makes listening to the book feel more real. It makes the characters feel like real people, the story feel like it's actually happening. And so I love that he does that. A few books that he has narrated that I really love are Peter and the Starcatchers, which is a series of books that's kind of like the origin story for Peter Pan. How did Peter Pan gain the ability to fly? How did he meet Tinkerbell? How did Neverland come to be? This series answers all of those questions, and it is just delightful and magical and whimsical. So I highly recommend it if you're a fan of Peter Pan. There is also an audiobook recording of Peter Pan, like the original by J.M. Barrie, and that is also read by Jim Dale. So again, lots of options if you're a fan of the Peter Pan story, but I highly recommend all of those just because Jim Dale just does all the voices, and I love it. I love when audiobook narrators do distinct voices like that. All of the Peter Pan related books read by Jim Dale are obviously for a younger audience. They're like children's and middle grade books. And so if you're looking for something that is for a little bit of an older audience, I would highly recommend The Night Circus. This is also read by Jim Dale, and he does all the voices just like he does with all of the other books that he reads. But this one is, like I said, for an older audience. It centers around two magicians and their apprentices who are in this competition to see which pair is the most powerful. And so you have these two, this competition that lasts a whole lifetime, and you're watching these magicians create this circus, which gives the book its title, and they're just making it just this dream. They're making it this magical, dream-like experience for all of the circus goers. I don't know, maybe it's because I listened to Jim Dale read Peter and the Starcatchers and Peter Pan and other childhood fantasy books that I just associate his voice with magic. Hearing him read this story about this magical circus was it was a different kind of magical for me. Felt like it was like bridging the gap between like these childhood fantasy stories that I loved as a kid, and now I get to hear that same voice and feel that same magic, but with like adult fantasy stories. Highly recommend The Night Circus, especially if you're not into like middle grade books or children's books. That's The Night Circus, narrated by Jim Dale. Okay, moving on to another book that's read by somebody whose voice I just really like. There aren't as many different characters in this book, and so there aren't very many different voices, and that's fine. To me, I just really enjoy the narrator's voice. But this book is The Alchemist, read by Jeremy Irons. Now, that name might sound familiar to you if Lion King was your favorite movie as a child like it was for me. Jeremy Irons was the voice of Scar in The Lion King. If you imagine that deep, gravelly, growly voice narrating The Alchemist, I just really enjoyed it. I just love that like really deep voice. This is a great option if you're looking for a quick listen, a quick read. This audiobook I think is like 4, maybe 5 hours. And so max, it'll take you 4 or 5 hours to listen to. If you're like me and you like to listen to it a little bit faster, then if you like to listen to it on like 1.5 speed or even 2 times speed, it'll take you even less time. So if you're looking for something quick, I recommend this book for that reason. Also, the voice is great. And this book is about a young man who lives in Spain, but he's told that he will find a great treasure at the pyramids in Egypt. So he travels through Spain, across northern Africa to Egypt. And along this journey, he meets a lot of different people who help him, some who don't. And he just learns a lot of lessons from this experience. It's very inspiring and motivational, and just kind of gets you to think about like what your purpose might be, what you want to do, and encourages you to follow your purpose, just like this young man follows his. Now I want to talk about a few books where the narrator like their voice just is the character. They are the character. I don't know how I imagine the character sounding before I listened to these audiobooks, but like since I've listened to the audiobooks, there's no going back. Now I just hear the audiobook narrator every time I pick up these books. So to start off, about Percy Jackson, the whole Percy Jackson series. This is a series of 5 books about a teenage boy who is the child of a Greek god and a human. So as a demigod, he has to go on a lot of quests and defeat a lot of mythical monsters and save the world a lot of times. And so that's what Percy Jackson is. Percy Jackson was one of my favorite book series as a kid, and so there's a lot of nostalgia there. I listened to the audiobook for the first time a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I want to say. The narrator, his voice was Percy. Like I just heard that voice and I was like, oh yeah, that's Percy. Like that's Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is a very funny kid. You know, he's a very funny character. He has a joke, he has a quip, he has a comeback for everything. Jesse Bernstein is the name of the narrator, and there's just a part of this voice where you can tell, there's just a part of his voice that just sounds like that, witty, about to crack a joke, like always smiling, always kind of like, yeah, ready to crack a joke. There's just part of his voice that sounds like that, and which is just perfect for the character of Percy Jackson. So Jesse Bernstein, perfect narrator for Percy Jackson. The next book I have in this little category is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. This book is read by Lamis Isaac and Amin El Gamal. I hope I'm saying those names correctly, but the narrator who voices Amina in this book just sounds exactly how I would imagine a middle-aged female pirate coming out of retirement would sound. She sounds exactly like that. In this book, the story is about a female middle-aged pirate coming out of retirement to save one of her crew members' kids who has been kidnapped by an evil sorcerer. Like I said, the narrator who voices Amina sounds like that. She sounds like that. I don't know what it is, but she sounds like a middle-aged woman who's come out of retirement, but is also kind of excited about it. Like she's kind of like, oh man, are you serious? One more thing, but also at the same time, you can tell she's kind of excited about it at the same time. And I don't know what it is about the narrator's voice that tells me that, but listen to the book and I think you'll hear the same thing. Another thing I love about this audiobook is that there are points in the book where Amina, who's telling the story is told in first person, and so Amina is literally telling us the story. There are points where even in the book, in the story, she gets distracted and you can tell she's talking to someone else. You know, she stops talking to you, the reader, and she starts talking to someone else. And so I love how that's portrayed in the audiobook, because it's like you're talking to someone on the phone or whatever, and, you know, she's talking and then she's like, wait, what? No, I'm telling a story, stop. And then she comes back and it sounds just like that. And I love that little bit of production to the audiobook, that they included that. Speaking of audiobook productions, a few audiobooks that I like that are a little bit more produced, have like a bigger cast of narrators, of characters, and just like more to the production. A few books in that category are the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. All 3 books are a production. You've got multiple cast members who are reading for different characters in the book, which is fun because in this series is about a teenage girl who decides to solve some murders. So she puts her detective cap on, she's interviewing people, and so in these interviews you have 2 different people speaking, and I think it's fun to have a cast of characters in a situation like that with a story like this in an audiobook. And another thing that I like about this is that in the second book, this teenage girl named Pip starts a true crime podcast based on the investigations that she's investigating. And so when it comes to things related to her podcast, they adjust the audio so that it sounds like you're listening to a recording of a podcast. And so I like that there are some details like that in this book. And now I think we're coming to the end of my list of audiobooks. And the last book on this list is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a memoir by Jeanette McCurdy, who was a child star on Nickelodeon, child actor. And she talks about her experience being a child actor, about her relationship with her mom, which kind of leads to the title of this book, and just everything she went through during that period in her life. Audiobook is read by Jeanette McCurdy, and I think because you're reading such a personal and emotional story, it being read by the author who experienced these things, it feels more personal. You get to feel some of that a little bit more, and I found that although I can't relate to a lot of those things, I still felt for Jeanette McCurdy so deeply after like hearing her tell these stories. Like, it's just, I think you'll hear a lot of people who listen to audiobooks, who recommend you listen to audiobooks, say this, or listen to a memoir that's read by the author of that memoir or the autobiography or whatever. Do it, because there's just something so much more personal and meaningful hearing those stories read by the author themselves. So I highly recommend I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, but also if you're looking to get into audiobooks in general, I would maybe take a look and see if your favorite actor, musician, whatever, somebody you look up to, see if they've written a memoir and read it themselves, because that's just a really good experience. So those are all of the audiobooks that I would recommend. Do you like audiobooks? If you do, leave a heart down in the comments down below to let me know that you like audiobooks. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.